Hi, my name is Jay Ford. I am the Virginia Policy Manager here with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and I am really excited to see such a big crowd for the topic known as the Bay Agreement, which it takes a special person to say, that's what I want to go spend my Wednesday night learning about. But we're very grateful to you all for joining us. It is, we are going to be talking a bit about, we're going to be talking about the Bay Agreement tonight. We're going to be doing some table setting for what it has accomplished and what things might possibly need to be changed and what's going to be coming in the future years. But before we do that, I wanted to let folks know that we are going to be recording this evening. So is everyone okay with that? Give me a thumbs up. This is going to be on Facebook Live. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate that. So we're so excited to have such an incredible panel of Bay leaders with us tonight, representing local, state, federal government. We are joined tonight by Congresswoman Kiggans. Give her a round of applause. We're going to do the whole line, yeah. By Delegate Askew, Delegate Tata, Deputy Secretary of Historic and Natural Resources Talon, and Justin Schaefer with the City of Norfolk. Each of these speakers represents a key sector in Virginia's role in fulfilling our goals under the Bay Commission. We could not have made the tremendous progress that Virginia has made without the support of all of these layers of government, from local to our federal representatives and our administration. And so our panel really represents the partnership here in Virginia. And so we're very excited to have them all here tonight to share their perspectives and what they hope to see in the years moving forward. The Bay Agreement and cleanup, it brings people together. Look at this room. It's an amazing crowd for a Wednesday night to talk about the Bay Agreement. We have all levels of government. We have rural and urban communities that care about Bay cleanup, coastal and non-coastal, farmers and fishermen, Republicans, Democrats, independents, and the people who, maybe are sane and say they don't like to follow politics. They all care about the Bay. And it is a unifying factor across the Commonwealth, and it's something that I think makes us very proud to be a part of, and I think all of our panelists as well, that everyone has this unfaltering commitment to restoring the national treasure. So for policy nerds like me, and apparently all of you, the Bay Agreement really is like a wonky dream. It is a unique model for bringing together disparate actors with varying interests to tackle a problem that none of them could solve on their own. So the agreement created a policy mechanism that has fostered incredible stakeholder engagement, shared accountability, and natural resource and community benefits. So tonight, we're going to do a very high-level overview of what the Bay Agreement is, where we stand in meeting our goals, and what comes next. Then we will hear from our amazing panel of speakers about the import of this work to them and what they are doing in their respective areas of government to help support the Bay efforts and get us across the finish line. So let's get started. All right, so you may have been able to use this before. This is known as Mentimeter. For folks that would like to ask questions, we are going to use this. You can take a picture of it, and you can submit your questions, and they will show up on our screen. And once we get through the panelists tonight, we'll work through those questions. So go ahead and preload it now. We will put it back up later, but appreciate you utilizing this tool. So first thing, who makes up the Bay Partnership? I think a lot of people come to Brock. They know that they see Chris or they see Christy, and they think that's the face of the Bay cleanup. The Bay Partnership is all of the states that have a stake in the Bay, all of the states that could potentially pollute or are polluting the bay, they are a partner in this. So that is West Virginia, Delaware, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., us here in Virginia, and the EPA. The EPA signs on behalf of really the entire United States government, because they are there representing a number of federal agencies that have a vested stake in the outcome and the natural resources of the Chesapeake Bay. So it is a unique model, and it is in many ways one of a kind, and something that has been unique and inspirational to others that are trying to tackle regional challenges for environmental impacts. Within each of these member states, there is something very similar to what we see for the US government, and that's that all of our agencies have some involvement in this process. I'm glad to see tonight we have Mr. Nickel from DEQ. Say hi. He is, DEQ is our lead agency in Virginia. They pass along the Bay deliverables back up to the EPA, but all of the other natural resource agencies and many of our other agencies across Virginia government have responsibilities to the Bay Agreement. So, for example, DCR, our Department of Conservation and Recreation, they manage the wildly important agricultural best management program. So they're putting hundreds of millions of dollars out on the fields to help clean up water around our farms, but they're giving that information to the team over at DEQ to get it up to EPA. So it is a all-hands effort across the watershed and the states, and it is an all-hands effort amongst the agencies within each of those states. So the Chesapeake Bay Partnership launched in 1983. The partnership and I are the same age. I find that very exciting and also maybe depressing depending on how it goes in the future years. But in 1983, they got together, and this was a one-pager. They signed a one-pager that said, we can't do this unless we work together. And now we make our way forward to where we stand now with the 2014 agreement, and that is when we put what are known as total maximum daily loads into the agreement, which are those water quality standards that we have on our tributaries that help drive nutrient and sediment reductions. And so during that 40-year time span, we have seen incredible progress, not just in protection of the resource, but also in refining over time what those deliverables look like as the science got better and our understanding of the ecosystem improved. So within the 2014 Bay Agreement, there were 10 goals. And I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I do think it is really important to recognize that they're not just clean up the water or protect the fisheries. When they thought through the Bay Agreement, they realized that it had to be a comprehensive approach, that it had to be something that involved a way to bring in all of the stakeholders, the 18 million plus people who live in the Bay watershed, and make them feel connected to the resource. And so you'll see a lot of the goals here really reflect the relationship between the natural resource and the people that live in the Bay watershed. So increasing environmental literacy, increasing public access, increasing conservation of our lands so people have green spaces to enjoy. But all of these have ancillary benefits of building up support and protections for the Chesapeake Bay. So the Bay Agreement is a unique model in that it helps get us out of the let's just stop this pollution here and that'll solve the problem thinking. It is a comprehensive approach to restoring the resource. So I'm definitely not going to read you all of this, but under those 10 goals, there are 31 outcomes. And the outcomes are really where the rubber meets the road. These are where the folks that were putting together the Bay Agreement said, these are going to specifically set out deliverables for us. So here you can see there are targets that range from things like oysters, which we are doing very well on, to black duck and brook trout and tree canopy and forest buffers, which are items that we're not doing as well on. And so here you can see that we have made significant progress on a number of those targets. So 18 of those 31 are on course to meet the deadline, which is something we should all be tremendously proud of because we've made a lot of progress to get there. However, there is still a lot of work to be done with 11 of these targets unlikely to meet that 2025 deadline and 2 of the targets remaining uncertain. So you'll see in the category of those that are considered off course that we're unlikely to meet, there are some pretty important outcomes. Things like our wetlands and forest buffers, that's an area that jumps out because in habitats is an area that the agreement and Virginia have really fallen behind on. In fact, when we look at things like forest canopy for the state, we continue to go in the wrong direction, actually. We're continuing to lose canopy. So some of these targets are, there's still a lot of work to be done. And it's a reason for us to come together and sort of do a reassessment as we come up on the 2025 deadline. Let's see. So, why is the Bay Agreement so important? I'm hoping you've already got it, but I do want to drive one other sort of unique point home. So there's the obvious, and that's we're trying to get cleaner waters, we're trying to improve our fisheries. Those are the things that jump to people's minds. But another thing I'd like to talk about, or at least highlight to you all, is that the Bay Agreement is found throughout Virginia's code, regulations, guidance, programs, and procedures. The Bay Agreement fingerprints can be found in everything from local planning to Virginia's response to climate change, to environmental education programs, to many of our state's land conservation programs, and to benefits on many of our farms, which is our biggest sector, that are getting healthier soils as a result of these investments. My point is that the Bay Agreement and our participation in it has helped Virginia to get beyond the traditional approach to environmental protection, which is find the pollution source, put a permit on it. It has got us to think bigger. And as a result of that, Virginia has tremendous natural resource protection programs throughout the state to help us meet some of these goals that are a little more than water quality. And so we have the Bay Agreement in many ways to thank for a lot of our natural resources successes here in the Commonwealth. And I think that's a really important point for people to recognize, that it's not just clean water. It is across the board natural resource investment is very grounded in our participation in the Bay Agreement, because Virginia legislators, they take those obligations seriously. And so, they roll up their sleeves and they've come up with innovative programs to help meet those goals. So here in our community, the Bay Agreement, you can see it in action. We've already talked about oysters. We're going to hit our oyster target. The Lafayette River is an excellent example. I've mentioned Virginia farmers a couple of times. A couple other people are going to mention them too, because it's such big news that we are fully funding our agricultural best management practices. And that has enhanced water quality, soil health, and reduced their need for fertilizers. So it is helping the farmer's bottom line as well. The agreement is driving investment. Additionally, the Bay is now home to the world's largest oyster restoration project. The James River, it's too dirty to swim, too dirty to fish in. We've still got some work to do there, but many people now go to Richmond to sit on the rocks, to swim in the river, to enjoy that resource, which was just not an option a few years ago. So the Bay Agreement has notched some pretty big victories that are making a change both in the economic and quality of life for Virginia citizens. So, are there things we can do better? When you're coming up on a deadline, it's a good time to take a step back and see where there are areas to improve. This is by no means an exhaustive list. Lots of people have lots of thoughts on how we could tweak the Bay Agreement to make it slightly better, but there are some major themes that have started to emerge around conversations on how we can improve the Bay Agreement moving forward. Big one is centering people. And what that means is we could do a better job ensuring that everyone benefits from clean water. So clean water, healthy environment, high quality environmental education, and access to the Bay watershed, and including, regardless of where you live and what your income level are, that's an area where the Bay we could do better. And we know we can do better. And so making sure that people are centered in the Bay Agreement and our work moving forward is a principle that a lot of people are calling to see included in a future agreement. Again, climate change, confronting climate change through both the mitigation and adaptation, particularly in communities and habitats that are disproportionately impacted. This has got to be a top priority going forward. If you've come to any events here in the last couple of years, you know at this point that what's happening with climate is making it harder for us to hit our Bay goals. These two things are very closely related. And so better integrating climate response into the Bay Agreement has got to be a top priority. And the other area, which I don't think is as intuitive as the other two, is an increased focus on shallow water habitats and living resources. And there's been a lot of research and studies produced by leading Bay scientists over the last couple of years where they're trying to figure out how could we get more bang for our buck in our investments, and how can we get a quicker response in these shallow water systems. And investing in living resources and those shallow water habitats has risen to the top of the pile as a priority. And so there are ways that we could tweak the Bay Agreement to make sure we are focusing on those waters that are closest to people, that people are enjoying for swimming, that are enjoying for fishing. And so that's another priority we'd like to see carried forward. All right, we're gonna move over to our speakers here in a minute, but if you would like to get involved in this process, there's Lisa Renee, you wanna wave at everybody? Lisa Renee has a wonderful table of goodies out front, and there is some information on how to make your opinion known to the folks at the Bay program that are currently gathering public comment. And you can also click on the link, which is on the card out front. So we encourage you to check those things out. Thank you all. We are now going to move to the exciting part of the evening, which is our speakers. So first, I want to welcome Congresswoman Jen Kiggans. Get my notes here. She represents the 2nd Congressional District, including the Brock Center, where we are sitting right now. The Congresswoman serves on the House Armed Services Committee, the House Committee on Natural Resources, a personal favorite, and the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. She also serves on the Chesapeake Bay Task Force, which we also love. The previously, Representative Kiggans served in the Virginia State Senate, where she in her last year was helping to lead efforts to build a more resilient Virginia. It took a little bit of time, but I'm very excited to say that just this year, the bill that she started with became a real bill. It passed. And so there, as of July 1 this year, that your efforts came to fruition with the creation of Virginia's first Office of Resilience. So we're grateful to that. We're grateful you can join us here tonight. And would you all join me in offering a round of applause to Congresswoman Kiggans?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. It's just a privilege to be able to be here with you, and I can think of no better place and no more beautiful scenery. This is the perfect venue just to look out and to really just be reminded of why we're all here and the work that we have to do. But It's a privilege to represent this district. As our host said, I work on the Natural Resources Committee. I'm also the co-chair of a conservative climate caucus that we have in DC. So we do a lot of work in this space. And I think, I've been in Congress about 2 years now. So really just understanding and learning about the hundreds of people that take this job very seriously, of protecting the bay, of keeping the waterways clean, of supporting the beauty that we have, the natural beauty that we have here in Hampton Roads, especially in Virginia Beach. So that doesn't happen magically. Just to see the literally hundreds that come to my office to visit, to advocate for this issue, to read the legislation that comes across our desks, and to be able to use my voice to speak for the beach and the bay. It's something that I certainly don't take lightly, and I've been working on things from the state Senate for 3 years. You didn't talk about the balloon bill. That's another favorite bill of mine that we really pushed for, that we got across the finish line to limit the balloon releases. And even now, I still have Senate colleagues that will text me pictures of balloons that we find. We need to make sure we continue to push to get rid of those threats. But our beach and our bay here are such an economic driver for our communities. It's approximately $10 billion between the travel and tourism industry. What that brings, people that come here to swim in the water. I certainly love to canoe and kayak. My son is a lifeguard at the ocean front. The people that come to visit the beaches there and enjoy that beauty. The fishermen that fish here, and then the oyster farm. You can see them even at the end of. I live in Little Neck, the end of my neighborhood. We have new oyster farms that they have put in, the oyster homes, the aquaculture, just the growth that we've seen. And a part of that is because of this, the Beyond 25, or the Bay Agreement that we have in place. But we haven't done all the work that we need to do. And we know that not just the oyster farms and the beaches and protecting the water, but all the other work. So it's really nice that we've taken just kind of a moment to think of beyond 2025 and the work to do. I know on my level, on the federal level now, we've worked on a couple of issues. These have been bipartisan issues. These have been issues that we've worked on, especially with the Virginia delegation. It's very easy to get the Virginia delegation to agree on focusing on things like the Beach Act. This was an expansion of how we were approving federal money to go towards places that investing in structures and infrastructure and flood zones. We don't want to invest in those areas that we know are prone to flooding. So really preventing that from happening, and it saves taxpayer money. So that's always a good thing. I worked with Congresswoman McClellan on a bill to look at PFAS discharge and where that was going, making sure that our military installations, especially, she sits on Armed Services Committee with me, but that it wasn't flowing into our waterways. So that was important work. It's a problem not just locally, but throughout military installations, throughout the world, really. So we need to continue to work on that. The Chesapeake Sea Act, I worked on with Bobby Scott and Rob Whitman. And this was it was a bipartisan bill restoring the health of the Bay watershed, strengthening fisheries management, expanding environmental education programs for residents in the watershed. There was the Resilient Coast and Estuaries Act, which was a bipartisan bill, again, that I co-sponsored, strengthening federal efforts to protect coastal and estuary habitats by reauthorizing and revitalizing the Coastal and Estuarine Land Conservation Program. And the last one I want to talk about is the ACE Act, which is America's Conservation Enhancement Act. I did this with Congressman Rob Whitman, reauthorize the Chesapeake Bay program, and just really put our money where our mouth is from Congress. I think a lot of the work that we're doing here locally requires funding on the federal level. So that's my job, to make sure that Congress is putting our money where our mouth is. It was a privilege, even just locally. Last week we did some earmark visits, and that was federally directed money that we got and brought back to the district. It's our money, it's taxpayer money that I wanted to bring home. We put in an improvement in the Eastern Shore, one of the HRSD wastewater management facilities. That wastewater treatment facility processes the wastewater and then puts it right back, into the beach and the bay that we swim in. So we want to make sure that water is clean, is to the best of our ability, that they have the technology that they need, they have the infrastructure they need to make sure they're processing that wastewater. So to see that funding come back here, to be put in a place like the Eastern Shore that needed that that money to work with HRSD and to get a tour. I'd never been to a wastewater treatment facility, and if you've never been, I highly recommend the tour. It was fascinating. But to see, you know, what they take in and then what they put out, what they put back into the bay, and then to hear their studies and statistics about, they've looked at, you know, things like not just the water quality, but the oyster quality, what's going on with the surrounding area, fish and whatnot. So to be able to be reassured that we're doing the right thing and going in the right direction was very rewarding. So it's a privilege to be able to work on those things, to be able to look out for the beach and the bay here, and a privilege just to be with you all tonight. So thank you very much for having us. I appreciate it.
Right. Next, we have Deputy Secretary of Historic and Natural Resources, Stephanie Talon, where she helps advise the Secretary and Governor on natural resource issues and environmental legislation. Stephanie, you're coming up on a year. She's coming up on her 1-year anniversary, and I just want to say on CBF's behalf, she came in and immediately dove head first into Beyond 25 conversations, which is a insanely large work group of people in excess of 70 humans. And she has been at all of these meetings representing the state and our natural resources and doing really just a tremendous job. And that is a lot to come in on year one. So I want to welcome her, but I also want to thank her. So if you could all give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Jay, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. As Jay mentioned, I'm coming up on a year in this role as Deputy Secretary of Natural and Historic Resources, and I was primarily brought on to focus on our Chesapeake Bay restoration efforts, and it really has been such a privilege and a responsibility that I don't take lightly to be working in this role during such a pivotal time leading up to 2025 when we have very important goals and deadlines and targets that we're reevaluating and seeing what's next beyond 2025. But I have to say, it's been easy. You know, it's been a challenge working on 2025, but it's been easy to come aboard in this administration. I think as everyone, if you don't know by now, the governor is from the beach and he loves the bay. And so that has been his charge to us from day one, is to go out there and not just talk about fixing the bay and restoring the bay and improving our water quality, but actually get out there and do the things that it takes to make this happen. And so we've already talked about, you've heard Jay mention the record funding for the Agricultural Best Management Practices Cost Share Program, which is the primary funding mechanism to help farmers implement best management practices to improve their water quality on their operations. We've had, under the Young administration, in partnership with our General Assembly partners, we've had historic funding, historic investments in this program, fully funding it for the first time in fiscal year 23, all the way through fiscal year 26. And so that is, I think, really important to note, is that we're not just fully funding for 1 year, we're already looking to the future and saying we're committed to doing this so that farmers can plan ahead, so they can build their business plans around this funding. And we're already seeing that play out. We've had increased participation in the cost share program. We've had record levels of nitrogen reduction in fiscal year 23, saw almost 1 million pounds of reduction in nitrogen, which again is record. And so you can see when you put the money there, people step up to do what's right and you actually get those results. And so that's one example of how we're getting out there and really tackling these issues. Jay mentioned oyster restoration. You know, Virginia's leading the charge there as well. We are on track to meet our oyster goal restoration, as Jay mentioned, and that means the restoration of 5 tributaries that were agreed upon at the start of this agreement, and in addition to 6 bonus tributary, because Virginia is doing so well, we had to add 1 more on top of that. And so those are really things to celebrate, to be pleased about, and to really acknowledge as we look what's next. It's always, I keep saying in these Beyond 2025 discussions, it's so important to acknowledge the work that has already been done, because if we don't take a minute and, you know, thank the people who are involved in these efforts, this is a marathon, and we're never going to get to whatever the end goal might be if we don't stop and appreciate everything that's gone into that point. So little soapbox there about how we need to sometimes look on the positive side. So I say that as a segue into, I'm kind of going to give the boring part of this presentation here, talking about the process of Beyond 2025 and why we're here talking about the Bay Agreement and why this is such an inflection point for Virginia and the Bay watershed as a whole. So as Jay mentioned, I am serving on what's called the Beyond 2025 Steering Committee. I'm representing Virginia on that. And The Bay program structure, I'm not going to go into every detail, to kind of give background of who makes up the Bay program, the primary partners. Within that partnership is a governance structure, and at the top of that structure is what's called the Executive Council, where the governors of the Bay jurisdictions, plus DC, plus EPA administrator, and the Chesapeake Bay Commission representative, they serve on the Executive Council, and they're kind of the top level of that governance structure. The level below that is what's called the Principal Staff Committee, where secretaries of natural resource and their counterparts in Virginia, it's my boss, Secretary Voiles, who serves on that committee, is the second level. And then below that is what's called the Management Board, which I serve on, and then my counterparts in other states and other agencies. And I say all this to give you an understanding of how this Beyond 2025 report came out. And so it is the result of a charge from the PSC, from the Executive Council to the PSC. So everyone recognizing that we're coming up on 2025, we've made some great progress, but there's still a lot of work yet to be done. So how does the Bay program tackle that, given that the agreement has been in place for 10 years and we're not quite where we need to be, we're making really good progress. And so the charge was essentially for the Principal Staff Committee to examine how we've gotten to this point. So charting a course is what they call it to 2025, and then what happens post 2025, beyond 2025. And so a steering committee was formed to really delve into that and put together recommendations for what the partnership and the agreement should look like going forward post 2025. As Jay mentioned, that there are about 29 representatives on that committee, including alternates. So total, we had about at least 70 people in the room every time we were examining these decisions and talking about making recommendations. I see some faces from my committee members here. They're looking a little starstruck here because they were a little shell-shocked, whatever you want to call it, because we've been through quite a lot here in this past year leading up to this report. So the Beyond 2025 report is out for public comment right now. And what the group did was take feedback from representatives all across the watershed, people from industry, from the scientific community, from NGOs, from government, to really get an understanding of what the issues are, what has worked, what hasn't, and what are the thoughts for going beyond 2025. And to cut to the chase, we came out with a report, which again is out for public comment, that has 2 overarching recommendations about what to do beyond 2025 for the partnership in the agreement. The first recommendation is essentially about the agreement and reaffirming the commitment to the Chesapeake Bay Agreement. This is a voluntary agreement, so it's not necessarily a done deal that all jurisdictions and all partners come back to the table. So it's really important that we take the time to say, hey, we're all still in this. We want to continue to work together and pull the same direction, and everyone come back and have a seat at the table. So that was the first kind of overarching recommendation is, yes, we want to stick with this partnership. And the second overarching recommendation was evaluating the partnership structure. And as I kind of alluded to, it's a pretty bureaucratic process. I won't even get into the other layers of this, but just to tell you that overall, Virginia has over 160 representatives within the Bay program structure. So our state agency employees all represent Virginia on various work groups and committees within the Bay program structure. That's a lot of people to be making decisions, right, and going up through the chain. And so the second recommendation, overarching recommendation, was basically to take a look at the program structure and reevaluate how can we be more efficient, how can we streamline operations to be as effective as possible, knowing this is a very large group of entities that have come together. So that's kind of the bottom line up front of that report. The rest of the report are what we're kind of calling high-level considerations, and those are more detailed things about some of the topics that you might be interested in, again, related to shallow water habitats, relating to conservation, land protection, all of the nitty-gritty details about things and the outcomes. You're not going to see a ton of how to implement these recommendations because that's what's coming in what we're calling phase 2. And so this is kind of the first step in where are we going post 2025. So these recommendations in this report have to go all the way back up that Chesapeake Bay program structure from the management board to the PSC, principal staff committee, up to the executive council, which the governors will then make decisions about these recommendations. So again, a long way of saying we have a long way to go in these conversations post 2025, but it's really, really encouraging to see everyone come together, particularly at events like this, to see how much folks really care about the work that is being done with the Chesapeake Bay. And I'll give just a couple more minutes of background of how we as administration have approached our decision-making process in this Beyond 2025 committee process. We've kind of looked at it from 3 lenses. And the first being, Would any decisions or would it require a complete overhaul of the Bay Agreement? And from our perspective, we were not in favor of completely throwing out the agreement and starting from scratch. As I mentioned, this is a voluntary agreement, and every jurisdiction, every partner is coming at this from a slightly different perspective. And so we were thinking that it's going to be really hard to get everyone to come to the table and completely write a brand new document. So we were coming into this with, let's amend the agreement, let's see what's working, what's not, what have we been successful on, what needs more work, and make tweaks and amend from there. The second consideration we had was whatever comes out of this process, particularly coming down from the federal government, will it require additional funding and resources from state and local governments that does not have dedicated funding already secured for it? And we're doing a lot of great work here, both at the local and the state level with our Bay efforts. And so we want to make sure that any new requirements that are coming down from EPA or other federal agencies have that dedicated funding with it, because we don't want to take away from our very limited resources that we have already. And then third, does it dilute the focus of the Bay program? Again, I keep mentioning how big this program is, and you saw that the 10 goals and 31 outcomes, that's a lot of work to do. And so, one program and one partnership simply can't be everything, for everyone. And so we really want to answer the question, what would not happen if not for the Bay program partnership? So we really want to focus on being targeted, being efficient, so we can be as effective as possible to meet our restoration goals and continue in the right direction. So hopefully that policy process background wasn't too boring for y'all, but I wanted to kind of give that background and understanding of where we're coming from as we talk about what's coming beyond 2025. So happy to answer questions as we get to the panel discussion. Thank you.
Up next, we have Delegate Alex Askew, who represents Virginia's 95th District, and that includes parts of Norfolk and Virginia Beach. He serves on House Appropriations, Education, and Cities, Counties, and Towns. He also serves on what I consider to be the best commission, and that is the Chesapeake Bay Commission. So I hope you all will join me in welcoming Delegate Askew.
Thank you so much, Jay, and the folks at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and of course, the hosting us at the beautiful Brock Environmental Center. As I came in, I said, I love this place. Every event, that I get invited to, I try to make sure and come. And someone said, you should come here more often. I was like, any invitation to come, I will definitely be here. And I have an opportunity to see the new education center too. So I would love a tour of that. But as Jay mentioned, I serve on the Chesapeake Bay Commission, and I think over the last 6 months, I've been on about 6 months, maybe a little less. I've probably learned more about the Chesapeake Bay and Bay restoration, and been in different parts of Virginia and Maryland that I didn't think I'd ever go to, and so that's been a wonderful experience. But we play a very important role in leading and shaping policy for the restoration of the Chesapeake Bay. And of course, I think you saw a graphic earlier that the commission represents Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. We cover a wide range of Bay-related issues, including managing living resources, conserving land, and protecting water quality. We've been instrumental in championing significant legislative initiatives that drive the restoration of the Chesapeake Bay and its living resources. As we move through another signing of a Bay Agreement, we must prioritize environmental justice as a central component of the new agreement. The current Bay Agreement has been crucial in driving substantial environmental progress. Many of our natural resource laws, regulations, and programs have grown of the commitments made on the Commission. It is imperative to pursue the signing of the new agreement to ensure the continuation of Bay restoration, but also for the many natural resources and quality of life benefits that it provides our citizens. While the Bay Agreement has led to successes in Virginia and across our region, events in science and environmental justice have made clear areas we can do a lot better. One of these things, and as we've seen over the last few years, climate change. We've had increased temperatures, and every year we have had historic increase in temperature. That will continue to impact our waterways and citizens in the years ahead if we don't do something now. Future Bay Agreements must directly address, as I said, climate change, covering both its causes and impacts in order to protect our environments and Virginia communities. It's imperative that the future agreement prioritizes people, especially those that have historically faced disproportionate pollution impacts and put environmental justice at its forefront. As we head back and we prepare legislation heading into January in the General Assembly, we must restore our national treasure, which we can see out the window and further out in the Chesapeake Bay. In the coming session, funding for stormwater management, agricultural best practices and management, and climate adaptation are keys that we will focus on. One of the great parts of participating in the Bay Commission is that we have opportunity to compare and contrast what our partner states have done. And I'll be honest with you, and as I've seen the deck at some of our meetings, we are wholly underfunding our environmental education. So there's another thing we will focus on to make sure our students and our kids in our communities and our Chesapeake Bay watershed can have hands-on experiences and know they have a direct connection to our environment and protecting our bay. But, you know, it's been an honor to serve on the commission, and I appreciate the panel that we're going to have after this. Thank you so much.
Next up, we have Delegate Tata representing Virginia's 99th District, which is all here in Virginia Beach. And she serves on the House Appropriations, Education, and Cities, Counties, and Towns, which when I was writing this, I realized they just like walk around the building together all day. She has been a great friend of the Bay during her time in the House, and we're so grateful you could join us tonight. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you. It is funny, Delegate Askew and I are always, we're on the same committees and we're neighbors kind of, so we see each other all the time and we're great friends. So my name is Ann Farrell Tate. I represent the 99th, as Jay just said, and that is northeast part of Virginia Beach from 17th Street just to the Lesner Bridge, so right on the other side of the Lesner Bridge and then up to just beyond the Central Library. And it really is an honor to be here, and I want to make it clear that Republicans love the environment too, and especially our governor, our congresswoman, this is something that is bipartisan, that we all agree we have to protect. As you know, as you may know, that Chesapeake Bay houses over 3,600 plants and animal species, which are essential for the Bay's ecological community and fishing economy. It serves 18 million people and covers 64,000 square miles. Virginia's vital industries, such as fishing and tourism, depend on maintaining healthy beaches and coastal waters. You've already heard about the 2014s when all of the stakeholders got together and the 10 goals and the 31 outcomes. Well, out of the 31 outcomes, 18 have been achieved, including some that are critical to my district, such as the blue crab abundance, fish habitat, and the public access. Virginia's Bay is a major driver of our economy in the Commonwealth, particularly here in Hampton Roads. Cleaner water in the Lynnhaven River benefits local businesses and fosters a growing oyster aquaculture industry in Virginia Beach. Did you know that Virginia is third in the nation for seafood production? The shellfish industry alone is responsible for over $100 million of economic impacts annually. Clean water is imperative to their success. By the way, Virginia is #1 in the country for aquaculture. Agriculture is Virginia's largest business sector, and the Bay Agreement has led to significant investments to help farmers protect their soils, reduce fertilizer costs, and improve quality of life for their livestock while cleaning our waters. And we in the Virginia Assembly, I'm glad Congresswoman Kiggans talked about the funding, and Stephanie mentioned it too. One of the things that we're really sensitive in the General Assembly is putting these mandates and requirements on localities without any funding stream. So we're very sensitive to that, and the General Assembly has fully funded agriculture best management practices, leading to some of the largest year-to-year reductions in pollution from the agriculture sector since the program's inception. The Bay Agreement also has driven stormwater and flood prevention investment for cities around Hampton Roads. Dealing with stormwater protects our waters and our economy by helping to keep our transportation system functioning and businesses dry. Hampton Roads takes in $6.5 billion in tourism annually. Our waters, fisheries, beaches, and stunning natural resources are significant motivations for visitors to the region. Improving the bay improves our economy while ensuring future generations will also get to enjoy this natural resource. So going into 2025, Virginia remains committed to a restored Chesapeake Bay, and we in the General Assembly, Delegate Askew and I, we will continue to lead the way with robust investments in the programs that are driving our reductions: wastewater, stormwater, and agricultural best management practices. I look forward to answering any questions. Thank you.
And our final speaker tonight is Justin Schaefer with the City of Norfolk. Justin is he is a key component of this panel because Justin is the one that has to deal with the consequences of everyone else's decisions up here. So what's happening at the federal level, what Virginia is doing with the Bay Agreement, ultimately our localities are the folks that are going to implement this. And so we thought it was very important to have Justin join us tonight. He is the Coastal Resilience Manager for the City of Norfolk, where he has pushed for innovative solutions to protect his city and their waters. He is a leading voice in the region for smart climate adaptation, and honestly, one of our favorite people to work with. So thank you, Justin, for joining us, and if you could all give him a warm welcome.
Well, good evening, everybody. Happy to be with you all here tonight. Always great to be at the Brock Center. Hope one day when I retire from the city, I can come work out here with you guys. Love this place. I'm happy to be here to represent local government. Of course, every city has handled implementation of the Bay program goals differently. But at the end of the day, I think they have been a big part of some of the successes we've seen both in our local waterways and the Chesapeake Bay as a whole. Over the past 14 years, I've worked with a lot of folks, even in this room, on design, implementation, monitoring, maintenance, all these key aspects of getting projects in the ground, making sure they continue to provide the benefits that we want to get out of them to meet our Bay program goals. Of course, a lot of this started with the Chesapeake Bay TMDL, and so a regulatory mechanism. And no local government necessarily wants to see new regulations coming down on them. But in this case, it was necessary. We just hadn't seen enough progress through voluntary measures. And so I think a lot of us took it in positive stride and started to look at how we could meet these goals. I think we were fortunate in Virginia in the way that the Bay TMDL was implemented. The watershed implementation plans that Virginia developed were fair in the way they spread some of the load requirements around, some of the reductions that were needed. So spread across both the development sector, the local government sector, wastewater, forestry, agriculture. So really kind of spread the workload. It was also really flexible in how we could go about implementing projects. So what we could implement. We weren't locked into just the same old projects that had been used for stormwater management for decades. So we're able to get a bit more creative in what we could do. We had flexibility as far as potentially trading amongst the different sectors. So a lot of options for the communities. The timing was also fortuitous in that in the early 2000s, 2010, when some of this started to occur, we were seeing nationally an increase in philosophies of green infrastructure implementation, nature-based solutions, as well as low-impact development. So these ideas of dispersed treatment of pollutants, treat every little spot you can, and try to do it in a way that mimics nature in some way. And so those practices were a little more interesting to people, both to the general public, to leadership. They started to provide us with a little more clarity on how we could go about meeting these regulatory burdens that we were now facing. A lot of practices, living shorelines, rain gardens, rain barrels, pervious pavement, riparian restoration, oyster reefs, they're not just treating water quality or providing habitat. Depending on what they are, they might provide air quality, heat reduction, recreational benefits. So all these co-benefits we like to talk about. And when it comes to identifying how to spend sometimes limited funds, that's important. You want to be able to maximize your co-benefits. And the ability to look at things not just from a cost perspective, cost effectiveness perspective, but from a cost effectiveness plus co-benefit perspective was really important. And we benefited with these changing philosophies. They started to trickle down into our comprehensive plans, into our zoning ordinances, into more specific plans like green infrastructure plans. Sorry. So you see here some of these green infrastructure and low impact development strategies, rain gardens, shorelines. So again, trickling into some of these plans, and again, that gets more focus on them. So the general public may have never heard of a rain garden, but when they start to see it in their comp plan, or when they start to see a bright, colorful green infrastructure plan being presented in the community, they get more interested in these practices. And what are they doing? Oh, we have water quality problems? Okay, I didn't know that maybe. So now they know about that. They know what we're doing to try to fix it, and they know why this little corner down here maybe looks a little more weedy in their mind than, you know, the normal manicured lawn they're used to seeing. So it's important for just that shift in mindset over time that's sometimes needed as we change the way our landscape looks with some of these projects. We've also been fortunate throughout this time that both at the state and federal level, we started to see more funding for these programs. So grant funds like the DEQ Stormwater Local Assistance Fund, just about every project we've implemented has touched some grant. The SLAF fund has been really important, as well as the Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund. Can't always be a grant. Sometimes loans are necessary, and those have also helped us to leverage some projects. At the federal level, National Fish and Wildlife and NOAA have put out all sorts of grants that have helped to see the city and our partners implement projects. So all of this, again, has given us a lot of flexibility, a lot of ability to be creative in what we're implementing, and to think things through, not just with cost in mind, but also with maximizing co-benefits for our residents. So just to give you some ideas of some of the projects that we've seen over time, you know, we started to think about, you know, rather than just thinking about boring old stormwater ponds or grass swales, we started to think about, all right, well, the Bay program says we can get credit for restoring a shoreline now, so let's go look at what shorelines in Norfolk need help. You know, there had been some traction on that over time. Some of our community partners, some early champions in the city have started to look at those. But we had a lot of shorelines in Norfolk that have been eroding over time or just covered in debris, called Norfolk rubble. You just take stuff and throw it on the shoreline. That's what people did to wetlands for a long time, sadly. So Norfolk's an old city, so we have a lot of that. So taking these shorelines, and you know, this is in Collie Bay, what can we do here? So take that, pushing offshore with rock, backfilling with sand, really expanding both the water quality filtration of that as well as the habitat value of it. And just the aesthetics, if you're out on your boat or if you're in the park adjacent to it, really just looks nicer. Again, shorelines, this is over by ODU. This is one they worked on. Large and small projects. Taking our ditches, you know, boring roadside ditch, we'll plant some wildflowers. Now, I'll say every year I still get calls about this particular ditch, say, when are you going to cut down the weeds? But again, it's part of that mind shift change. You let them know, well, once it finishes blooming this fall, we'll give it an annual trim, we'll cut it back, and then it'll grow back next year and rebloom. So over time, you get less and less of those calls, hopefully, most of the time, and you get some slow change. And you know, taking those boring old ponds I keep mentioning, well, they don't have to stay boring. You take them, you can retrofit them, provide more nutrient reduction benefit, more wildlife habitat, you know, adding wetlands and buffers around the edges, adding forebays and aeration. Taking those ditches or big open spaces, not many of those left in Norfolk, but maybe low-lying spaces, and turning them into giant wetland systems that, again, provide filtration, help to store water. Even taking old areas that we had historically filled. In Norfolk, like many localities around here, we took the rivers and we literally just threw dirt in them until there was land there and we could build something on them. But that didn't always work. Some of those areas just stayed muddy, muddy, muddy. You can see there on the left, the colorful images, that shows where the creek used to go. And so that's all land now for the most part. So we took it and we opened it back up. We call it daylighting, and we built a pond there. And so then created recreational paths around it and spaces, and again, it provides some flood reduction, provides some water quality benefits, some recreational benefit. So reusing those spaces. It wasn't just the city, or you know, the state had implemented guidance that required commercial entities during development and redevelopment to look at how they can reduce their inputs of nutrients and other pollutants. So we started to see things like rain gardens rather than just a parking lot with standard landscaping. We'd see rain gardens, pervious pavement, tree-lined parking lots. So a lot of different options that we started to see popping up around the city as redevelopment occurred. And probably most importantly, for me and the work that I've done, I love my big projects, but I also love our community partners. Norfolk and this region in general is very fortunate to have a lot of organizations and tons of amazing volunteers. And they had really spearheaded this work for many years before the localities started to get involved in it. Building projects, big projects like this oyster reef off the Granby Street Bridge. You can see some oyster balls down there, all sorts of different practices. Or smaller projects, this rain garden at Teens with a Purpose. And really thinking about even sort of innovative practices. As sea level rise occurs, our bulkheads are getting overwashed more and more, and the lawnmowers are getting stuck, and it doesn't work anymore as a walking path. So why not come in, rebuild a walking path, but also restore the wetlands next to it, rather than letting it just stay a muddy lawn next to the bulkhead. Just because you have a bulkhead doesn't mean you can't do anything around it. So again, just thinking creatively about what we can do. And it's been great to work with community partners on piloting some of these ideas. And with sea level rise in mind, that's sort of the next frontier we started to move into as these issues of climate impacts, be it sea level rise or increasing storm frequency, heat impacts, and how can we now start to modify practices, expand practices, and increase the scale of them to add even more benefits, to handle water better, to handle heat better. And so projects like Ohio Creek, we were able to get over $100 million in grant funding to implement this neighborhood scale project. So ringing the neighborhood with wetlands, levees, interior drainage improvements with bioswales, floodable park spaces, tree plantings all over. So just combining all of the practices and all of these concepts together, green infrastructure, low impact development, to provide massive benefits to the community, really to highlight what we can do. And we've continued to expand from there. St. Paul's Blue Greenway is sort of the next of the big exciting, say, green projects that's on the horizon for the city. We hope to go to construction on this one later this year or early next. But this will be a 9-acre stormwater wetland. Again, a daylighting project where a creek used to extend a mile into the city and was completely filled all the way to what is now Harbor Park. We're taking a section of that and we're going to open it back up. Won't be a tidal creek because we want to keep the water out to help us with those tidal impacts, flooding impacts, but it will create wetlands, riparian buffer, tree plantings, park space, in a part of the city near downtown where we haven't had that in the past. There's some social equity issues here where we're redeveloping the community so that the residents can move back into an area that's higher, out of the flood zone, safe, clean. So really, again, tying together more and more of these co-benefits and really benefiting from some of the grant funding from different agencies that are trying to support this sort of work. And that's not the end of it. Going forward, the Bay Agreement's going to be important. We have to keep thinking about how do we innovate, how do we remain flexible, and how do we keep things accountable. Sea level rise, I've mentioned that a few times. Both our natural wetlands and our restored wetlands are eroding. They're drowning out. We're going to have to find ways to maintain those, to repair them. We may have to use thin layer placement of sediment on them. So some of these things that are being slowly done around the country, but we're going to have to bring it to Virginia. We're going to have to do it here. And for each practice, we're going to face these growing challenges, and we're going to have to find new ways to innovate and just keep thinking forward. What is the next type of practice that we can put in that provides those maximum benefits for our residents? So with that, definitely hope to see further support for the Bay Agreement and continue putting all these great practices in the ground. So thank you.
Thank you again, Justin, and thank you to all the speakers again. We really appreciate your comments. We have gotten a good amount of questions in, and I'm going to try and sort them as we go through into some categories. But Justin, while you're fresh, we did get a couple of questions specific to your presentation, so I'll let you get your cup of water. And then, so we got a couple of general questions about expanding on the relationship between green infrastructure and co-benefits with non-environmental benefits. So I think folks are looking for some additional details on what are the other benefits to a community outside of those environmental.
I think, in our green infrastructure plan, we looked at a lot of the research on the benefits of green infrastructure. And of course, we know they clean the water, the air, provide heat reduction, habitat. But we also saw that they have significant health benefits. For instance, if you're walking through a tree-lined street, you're a lot happier and a better mental state than if you're walking down a concrete, path. So general health benefits in that way, economic benefits. That they find that communities that have, tree-lined streets, flowers, are going to have higher sales. So these sort of ideas on economics and health. So those are some of the major sort of non-environmental co-benefits. And I think, as far as social equity, over time we've seen a lot of marginalized communities pushed into areas that we've essentially destroyed. So the St. Paul's area, for example, with low-income community public housing, and that's where folks were living, because that's where public housing had been built. So by restoring that, raising the actual living area, and then creating recreational assets, healthy assets nearby, really helps with some social justice issues as well.
Great, thank you. A question that's really to everybody is, who are other decision makers that you all think they should share their views and support for the Bay with? And I'll kind of let whoever would like to jump in.
We can each answer, I guess. I mean, for me, the Virginia delegation, I think we work well together. We share a bipartisan lunch once a month that we all go to. So, and it's easy because pretty much everybody who represents Virginia at least knows about Hampton Roads and has been down here to visit at least once. So, so those are my strongest advocates. Anytime I want to have a voice for legislation that affects the beach or the bay, we frequently will go to our Virginia delegation first, and they're almost always happy to help.
I'll add that at the state level, I would certainly recommend having a relationship with your legislators in General Assembly that serve on the agriculture committees. So those are the committees that natural resources issues flow through, including, of course, a lot related to the Chesapeake Bay. So those are great folks who are very knowledgeable about these topics. They've been on the committees, a lot of them, for many, many years. And so those are great folks to get your thoughts and issues in front of. I'll also add specifically to Beyond 2025, if you have any thoughts, I'm happy to take them and pass them up through the committee.
Everyone else is good? We have a couple of questions about the blue crab. And in particular, given that that is one of the Bay program targets, do the panelists have any response or thoughts in response to the recent MRC vote to explore revisiting the winter crab dredge fishery? And I'm not going to put anyone on the spot, but I think Stephanie probably knows the most, so I'm going to let her go first.
So Jay is referring to a recent Virginia Marine Resources Commission decision to repeal a regulation prohibiting winter dredge of blue crab. And it's important to know that that does not establish a winter season for blue crab. It is merely allowing the commission to explore what that could potentially look like in conjunction with all of the other blue crab management efforts. And that's something within our administration that we have been working on, is really encouraging our fisheries staff to take a more holistic approach at managing these species. So it doesn't necessarily mean we are taking more than we already are, but how does that play out throughout the entire year, and what kind of options do we have looking at the season as a whole? So I think there's more to come on that. Again, this is not a done deal by any sense, but it's just allowing these conversations to happen as we look at the future of these harvests.
Right. We, We have a couple of questions on Menhaden as well, and I figure we'll just get all the fishery questions out at once. So the there is a couple of questions along the lines of, could you comment on the reduction fishery in the Chesapeake Bay, and would you support a study that was specific to impacts on the Chesapeake Bay?
So there was legislation this past session to look at a study on Menhaden and the impacts in the bay, and that did not pass the General Assembly. In terms of the future of the Menhaden industry and the harvest, I think, again, it goes back to what I was saying about the blue crab, and that we have to look at all of our fisheries from a holistic standpoint and what is balancing the interest. We've talked about with the bay, how many people are impacted by the bay, how many people make a living off of the bay, and so it's not a one issue, one stakeholder type thing. It's everyone there are multiple facets and multiple stakeholders involved in every issue, including Menhaden, which of course is a very complex issue, and so I think that is very important to consider that balancing the economic and the environmental impacts at the same time, and so I think that's what we're trying to do, again, with our fisheries management and making sure we're having that holistic approach that considers all stakeholders' impacts.
All right. This is a question specific to Norfolk. Someone asked, the Steamboat Creek in Norfolk is highly polluted. Are there any plans in place to restore this area anytime soon?
Yep, we actually have received some grant funding from DCR Community Flood Preparedness Fund to start studying that creek in terms of opportunities to restore wetlands. So we'll be looking at both public and private property opportunities in the creek, as well as up at the mouth of the creek, but also deeper into the headwaters of the creek where we know for sure due to Phragmites and invasive reed growing in too thick, it's actually choked off the channel and it's causing some drainage issues. So we'll be looking at some opportunities for water quality habitat as well as flood reduction in that creek. So we plan to start that work here before the end of the year.
Great, fantastic. That's also a good segue for another, I'll say, category of questions we have, which is concerned with the sustainability of funding for resilience work. The number of folks note that the General Assembly did put money in year one into the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, but right now there is currently $0 in the second year. And the general tenor of questions is, are you committed to looking for some sustainable funding source to help us continue these types of resilience projects?
That's a good question. I appreciate it, Jay. And I mean, one of the focuses for the General Assembly as a broad and us on appropriations, and I put in the bill last year to help with some Elizabeth River cleanup. But to your point about sustainable funding, we're going to start having conversations about our primary focuses as we head into the General Assembly session. But that will be at the top of my priority list since we've already focused on it, and just this existential crisis in Virginia, specifically in Virginia Beach and Hinton Roads, and something that we need to focus on as a delegation. And we've seen that some of our colleagues, as far as they understand some of our issues here in Hinton Roads because it's an economic driver and a multitude of other things that I think it's not just a Hinton Roads issue, but a statewide issue.
We also have a couple of folks that have asked for our decision makers, what is, and this might be a trap, but what is the best way to reach you and your colleagues? Is it email, letters, snail mail? I think they're looking for the most effective means of communicating with you all.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have my chief of staff is in the back, Tyler. He loves phone calls and emails and all those things. Please ask him in person. But you can go on my website. If you just Google Jen Kiggans in Congress, our official website comes up and there's a contact me form. And we read all of those. we better be responding to all of those. Please continue to or call if we don't, because I keep tabs on how many people are reaching out about every issue that you hear about in politics. But feel free to call. Our numbers is on the bottom of the website for my Washington office, for my Virginia Beach office, for my Suffolk office, and for my only office on the Eastern Shore. So all of those numbers are out there, but the contact me form is probably the best. People sometimes will choose other ways, social media, messaging, that type of thing. I'd say the official form is really the best way to go, because we have plenty of staff that's dedicated to the different committees I sit on. So if it's a natural resource committee, I have several staff members who will absolutely read and get you a response back.
Or actually, your office, yeah.
I'll say. I'm happy, please, to share my email address, phone number. Please feel free to come up to me after this, and happy to share that contact information. I should have mentioned at the beginning that our secretariat oversees 5 agencies: the Department of Environmental Quality, Department of Conservation and Recreation, Virginia Marine Resources Commission, Department of Wildlife Resources, and the Department of Historic Resources. So if you have any issues, concerns, or anything related to any of those agencies, happy to get you in touch with the right person if I don't have that answer.
And as far as the General Assembly, any of the 40 senators or the 100 delegates really go into the for General Assembly website, and it lists all of our contact, our phone numbers, our email. And if you need me specifically, you can get with Andrew Cohen, who's one of my constituents. He knows exactly how to reach me.
And, I second everything Delegate Tata said. And of course, DeJuan Stiegel, who's my chief of staff, he's here as well. So if you need anything, you can see him in person today, or our delegate email. The official channels typically work the best, so we can make sure and keep track of our communications with you all. So mine is delegate, DELASKIO@house.virginia.gov. And again, it's on the General Assembly website. We're pretty easy to find and reach. Yeah.
We have another question. It is, and maybe this is for you, Stephanie, is how will the Beyond 25 plan address overdevelopment in terms of habitat preservation?
So first, I will note that, and it is semantics, but I think important to note that the Beyond 2025 report is not necessarily a plan. So if you read this report, you're not going to see a step-by-step, here's how we restore the bay. And so I just say that to give some context about what is in the report and what potentially will come out of the report in the future. And so in terms of habitat protection and preservation, as I mentioned earlier, we took a lot of information from a lot of stakeholders and synthesized it into this report. And so you will see references to prioritizing the protection of nearshore habitats and the shallow water discussion. We broke into what are called, we had small groups that focused on specific topics. I was part of the shallow water habitat small group. And so we talked about, how you potentially could have quicker short-term winds and impacts if you tackle shallow water habitats versus the deep water habitats. And you'll see that reflected in this report. Again, in kind of general terms, because that is what this committee was charged with, was really kind of putting together those broad themes, those kind of consensus items that we saw across discussions with various groups and stakeholders. So that's a long way of saying it is in this report, but it might not necessarily be the specifics that you are looking for at this time, because that's to come in phase 2.
Thank you. We have a couple questions that deal, that ask specifically about impacts to Virginia waterways post-Sackett. I'm going to go ahead and answer that one on everyone's behalf, because I think it helps drive home one of my points from earlier, which is that here in Virginia, post-Sackett, we did not lose any protections. And that is because we have very strong wetlands protections on the books. And if you pick up our wetlands guidelines, you will find a direct reference to our participation in the Bay Agreement and those goals. And so that was a major driver behind why Virginia adopted its own state protections on our wetlands, that in the wake of the Sackett ruling did not mean that we lost protections. All it really meant is we lost Army Corps support, and our poor folks at DEQ had to work a little harder. But I think it's a good reminder that the Bay Agreement really drove good environmental outcomes here in Virginia. Does anyone else want to add to that?
Well, I don't, this is not really about that, but I want to, since I have this opportunity, I want to say, especially Justin, you said that you're always looking for innovative and outside the box thinking. And this is one of those, we all need to have a seat at this table to do what we have to do. And Stephanie and I, a couple days ago, had the opportunity to go to Gloucester. It was a coastal resilience and adaptation ecosystem. And RISE is an organization that uses Go Virginia funds, and they host an innovation challenge competition. And we saw 5 unbelievable, innovative, new technology. And what they do is they hooked up with Sea Grant. So they work with universities. And 2 that were really, really exciting. One is called nature-based exoform living shorelines. They take repurposed dredge material and they make these big blocks. And right now they're around Hog Island. And it really helps with the carbon footprint, and it promotes habitat growth and ecological benefits. And they're really, it's the coolest technology, and they're bringing them to Virginia. And another one was the living shoreline vegetation production. And this, again, I love this because it's called Not Alone, Hold Fast. And it's a guy that really struggled with PTSD. And they do these, they have these, their vegetation production. And what they do is they take current available vegetation, they grow it, where there's parts that are missing, they go and plant it, and they work together with different people that have their, small nurseries. So it helps everyone. It helps people with small businesses, it helps the military, people that are struggling with PTSD, and it helps the shoreline. So those are just 2. There were, I think, 5 that were all really innovative, outside thinking. And I'm like, we've got to tap into those kind of things to, really make a difference. And a lot of them were they weren't that costly. And you have the researchers from the universities involved. So really everyone coming together, the Sea Grant, RISE, Go Virginia, tapping into all that to offer some of these programs that you should definitely check them out for starters. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Delegate. I think that's a really important point. I think everyone is very excited about the opportunities for economic development, and when we're tackling the water that's kind of knocking at our door here. So it's a problem we have to tackle, so we might as well create some jobs while we're doing it. And I think it's a win-win. So thank you very much for bringing that up. I think we have time for one more, and Congresswoman Kiggans, this one seems directly tailored for you, and that is, how could Virginia get more federal funding? Match funds, develop shovel-ready projects, or better align with federal priorities? What's the secret recipe in your mind to pull down more dollars?
Well, I'm sure probably many of you are paying attention to the appropriations process that we're in right now, and it's a struggle on all fronts. There's, a limited budget, and we're trying to prioritize in Congress. We have 12 appropriations bills, of which we've passed about 6. We've got the end of the fiscal year coming up. So it's a challenge, and it's a lot of priorities out there. I sit on our Services Committee and Veteran Affairs, so those are also committees that require a lot of funding, and there's a lot of investment in this district as well, because we have a large military and veteran population. But sitting on that committee, I think, is really important for the person who represents this district. So sitting on natural resources gives me an opportunity to be a part of those discussions, a part of those hearings, the people that we invite, and to have a voice really in that appropriation space. So I'm thankful for that committee assignment. I think it sets up just our region well. And then, the onus is on me to continue to use that voice. We have been able to participate in things like floor speeches, just attending the committees, asking questions for the people that we invite, working with colleagues on both sides of the aisle, again, to make sure that we're prioritizing funds in the natural resources space for this district too. So, and then just hearing from you. I work for you all, so and probably a lot of you are subject matter experts even more than me about the Bay and the needs of the Bay. So reach out to our office. Let us know if you hear something that's up for funding. Please reach out to us and say that, hey, this is important to me. We track those things, and then I can use your voice and echo it and make sure that we get the funding that we need. But thank you for asking.
And thank you again to all of you.